Awesome. Well, Rashmi, thank you so much for joining us today on the Inside Scoop. Really excited to kick off our year by having you on and just hearing so many of your different insights.
I'm super happy to be here and yeah, really excited to chat about everything with you here.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to start with is just more about your experience with PLG, because I talked with so many founders and they talk about, do I do sales-led growth? Do I do product-led growth? How do I decide if I start with a model, do I stick to it? How do I switch? And you've got a really cool background, and having worked with the company as it was had made really successful in one model and then switched to another. So I just love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, but yeah,
Not, let's take a step, not go through total the PLG, but let's just lay that foundation on what your experience was like and kind of what was that. When did you start with like, hmm, maybe we should switch?
my career originally did start in a sales-led motion-based company. It was in the data space. I had a lot of exposure to most companies that were kind of following this particular model of a two-step sales process with an SDR, an AE, a certain deal value, and running that type of motion to basically acquire revenue and figuring out the conversion rates, but mostly trying to rely on the volume and having a linear understanding of scaling the sales reps to generate revenue. And the understanding was, oh, that will get us to the numbers for this quarter or next. One of the challenges that became very clear, especially in that industry, and I'm going to take the industry of like the data and the sales intelligence and
Mhm.
sales tools platform for this particular example, is that as competition was strong, you are in a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. There's a lot of dynamics, and the sales motion becomes extremely pressured in meeting revenue goals efficiently. And it becomes an executive level problem to figure out that efficiency. How sustainable is it? And early on, when you are faced with such a competitive environment, companies that are in earlier stages, Series A, et cetera, feel the stronger effect of it. There's only so much VC capital that you would be willing to burn through just on sales and marketing budgets without really trying to figure out that math problem that works out. So
Yeah, that's so interesting because I know we're in 2025, so funding has become, we're out of that pit of despair that I feel like I saw in San Francisco in 22, 23. But you're
mhm,
right, it's still, we're not in 2021. I don't think we'll ever get back to those crazy days with zero interest rates. So what you're saying is really applicable to companies that are still trying to figure out that early go-to-market motion,
yeah.
especially around how do I do more with less?
Yeah, and they shouldn't because that's just not where the efficiencies of business are. And, we might see an upturn in the capital availability for startups, but even then, there's absolutely no reason why any company would want to go back to that kind of burn rate on as sales and marketing costs. But PLG, I feel, has basically seen this type of growth surge because here's there's two aspects to it, right? The one is that you have your cost model on how you design sales teams and is this sustainable in the overall revenue model that you've built out. And the second aspect of it is from the customer experience side. More and more as we are offering more specialized software, more software that can be customized and built in a modular fashion for specific needs or specific industries, there is a need for the customer to really try and learn, like, is this software really fit for us? There is an appetite for trials that basically gets punted downstream from a sales-led motion. And if you're thinking overall in an enterprise sales motion perspective, and there are softwares that are suited for that, that does make sense. You kind of bring a top-down level buy-in and then run a trial. But there are a lot of software in the SaaS space where getting to the user and getting the user's excitement, getting the user's interest, their repeated stickiness, that kind of trend is much more desirable to get upfront, to get real early feedback on how to evolve or trend your product towards customer needs very closely and very directly. And from this need, you basically have this motion like a PLG motion that makes sense when you see an industry where the users are extremely enthusiastic about self-solving the problems in front of them and want to go get that solution that'll fix their issue and are willing to just sign up and get going. And then you have the second piece, which is this market size that is large enough that you want to get to market and put your solution in front of them and try and get in front of their eyes, get your product in their hands as quickly as possible. And I guess to begin with, it's important for any company to kind of understand, does my solution, does my product fit that mold? Does this make sense? Does PLG make sense? And then we begin this understanding of like, well, then how do we acquire these users? How do we convert them? How do we monetize them and so forth? So yeah, it takes some amount of workshopping to really understand if this is right for your company.
And how do you balance that? Because earlier when we were talking about it's best thing to do if you've got limited funds. On the flip side, it's a lot harder for some companies to get $101,000 contracts than one $100,000 contract.
I think the earliest pains that you feel in the startup journey as a founder, as an early startup operator, is that you need to get that sense of product market fit early on and also get that sense of scale on whether this is a motion that works. And you may not have a lot of capital to burn on large amounts of marketing strategies or ad buys, but what you can do is a lot with outbound. And seller outbound is very translatable to founder outbound, to those early companies that want to get in front of their customers early and start them with using their product. Most decision makers are very inbox zero types of people. And so figuring out how to do outbound in a way, not just to get the decision makers in the loop about what your product is or what it can do, but also at the same time be able to reach your users and present your product in ways that you want them to use this product. That's kind of a balance that I think the industry is really trying to trend towards. The typical understanding is, yeah, you gain users just with the organic strategies that you build out or your paid strategies that you build out. And those are very core parts of this journey, but they do take time to figure out. They do take time to hone. And you need to have that give, to your marketing team to be able to figure that out and have those experiments yield results and insights. But you can do a lot with well-designed outbound plays in terms of monetizing any existing users, acquiring users that are primed to use your software by targeting them very closely at accounts that are very primed to be a good fit for your software. And then, of course, positioning yourself well ahead in front of the decision makers at these companies. So I've seen a trend in companies that are doing PLG that care very much about how they build out their account strategy, because these two things definitely go together. You think very early on about how to monetize across the company, even if your bottom up strategy is about free user acquisition.
So, and I'm getting a little personal here for a second. So let me know if this gets too. But you mentioned inbox zero. Are you an inbox zero person?
I have to say that I think there's a very high correlation between how close to inbox zero I am to how stressed I am. So yeah, I think that in a world that's getting much more, chaotic and information is everywhere, and how to get right information that's relevant to you is a constant problem. The inbox still is a space that people can't ignore and get important things done. So at some level, whatever jobs we're doing, we all have some kind of systems in place to figure out what's important, what's not, what's getting done. And I don't see that changing. Whether you're completely an
Mhm.
inbox zero person or not, you have some system for it.
Absolutely. I'm personally not an inbox zero person, but that's because anytime, when you're on the run and you're like, wait, where's my to-do list? Which mine's very high tech, it's paper in front of me, but that's my default to-do list. Haven't answered your email, it's unread for a reason.
Yeah, I see that. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, you have a system of what's there in
Mhm.
your inbox that you need to be on top of and what can wait. There's a system there and it matters.
Absolutely. So one of the things I love what we touched on so far in terms of PLG and just diving right into that, like PLG, SLG, how to decide what our company's going through. And, because so many people listening are probably going through that question of what type of companies right to me? Do I make the pivot? One of the things too is that you've been in software and selling it for over a decade now. How really have you seen these different go-to-market motions change? Because that's one thing where talking to so many founders, what have you seen for those people who are just getting into it, maybe founders selling for the first time? And then for operators who are looking at it 2025 saying like, I don't even know what this AI thing is. Like,
Hmm.
what should they be expecting? And
Yeah, I think the one of the really important factors that has shaped this environment of how to sell is we talked about email being this primary, core channel that salespeople use to get in front of their customers. The second channel, of course, is phone, and now we have like the all-powerful social media. And I think between these three and other channels that are industry specific and how to get in front of your customer, it's become really, really important as the trends have progressed from 2016 onwards to multi-thread across channels. And from that perspective onwards, it's become extremely important for a go-to-market person, whether you're a founder, whether you're an operator, whether you're a salesperson, to have a very clear structure on how you're going to go about operationalizing a go-to-market plan, a playbook, a strategy that you want to hit. And as technology has evolved, we're seeing also on the other side trends of how email service providers are responding to high inbox usage, high emails volume sent for sales and marketing purposes. And it's become this cat and mouse game between sellers who want to use the email as a channel to get in front of their customers and technologies that provide their services to ensure that it's not being used to bombard their users with overwhelming amount of emails. So, I mean, coming from there, the first major trend that I've seen is a very forward thinking responsibility towards managing the infrastructure of how you send your emails and how you don't make them the types of emails that can get caught as spam, or they're the types of emails that do stand out and are accepted by your customers as emails that they would like to receive. There's also a trend towards massaging your messaging so that you're not directly approaching for an ask without providing value. So I think there's also been a trend towards making meaningful value come through first in any communication or touch you have with your customer, whether it's through email, whether it's through any other channel. And I think the third part of it is go-to-market folks are also seeing in the tech stacks that aren't just large platforms, which are one for all platforms. They're using modular tech stacks with multiple types of technologies that they want to stitch together so that they can design a good GTM strategy that fits their industry and their customers. So that kind of composability has also emerged as a need and as a part of the strategy. So yeah, I mean, broadly, I'd say those are some of the big trends. I think about AI. We through 2023, we saw a lot of experimentation and thinking around how can we use AI? How is this useful in personalizing emails or getting in front of customers or operationalizing data? But the big trend now is as we're all grasping our interfaces and our abilities to leverage AI, the thinking is now kind of translating from hype more towards reality. Companies are being evaluated with their products on how this AI solution will actually get operationalized in a workflow rather than what's this cool thing it's doing? The thinking is, how do we make this a part of our workflow that works for us? And companies that package their AI in a very user-friendly way and that also have a clarity in what kind of outcomes their AI will drive, those I think are going to lead the pack. It's early to say which ones are going to emerge as complete winners right now. It's still a very red ocean environment, but very interesting to see the trends right now.
You mentioned there too is especially on email and just email open rate, email deliverability. There's just so many different things on this. And what are the things to consider? Because I want to ask you what is the right answer, but I know there isn't one. So what factors would you consider?
Yeah,
And if there is a right answer, let us know.
yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there is like one magical right answer, but I do think that it's very important to think very systemically about how you're going to run a process that you intend to scale without burning it. And by that, I mean you think about infrastructure, how, you may write the world's best cold email, but it's worthless if it doesn't hit the inbox. So you start there. It's kind of tragic how really great email campaigns can fail if your infrastructure is not properly set up. And so what I mean by that is, how to set up your inboxes, buying domains and adjacent domains to your main domain, optimizing your domains to increase deliverability, setting up your inboxes with those domains with the right kind of settings so that you're not triggering spam filters and ESP rules that filter out your emails. Email service providers basically expect human-like behavior from senders. And
I
if
love,
you,
I really want to re-emphasize that because that's such a great point.
yeah, they're looking for human-like behavior. And being able to do things at scale also needs to consider how you meet those human-like behavior standards so that your email doesn't just get flagged by an ESP. If you do get flagged, your entire domain can get penalized. So you need to think of things like avoiding spam by setting up DKIM, SPF, DMARC filters, and records. And also further down the line, once you have this level of infrastructure set up, what are you doing to warm your inboxes so that there is a recognition that there's an authenticity, a trustworthiness to your sending inboxes that'll allow them to perform at the levels that they required to perform. So at the very least, it's important that these ground level structural steps are met. And then, of course, you have the next phase of things about writing good emails, bringing value as a very core part of how you approach your customer. How do you personalize to scale? How do you use AI and what kind of sending practices are you implementing to make sure that you are staying within these rules consistently? So yeah, I mean, there's no one good answer, but there is a list of things that you should keep in mind that you are doing properly so that you're not ending up unread, so that you're at least on the right path to running your experiments to success.
I can say ending up in spam is even trickier these days. My new product manager and I were joking, and if he accepts my invites or I accept his, the accepted invite notification goes directly to spam, even though we're sending within domain.
That's crazy.
We, send each other emails.
This is the mysteries of it all. How did it end up here indeed? So yeah, no, this is a very dynamic world and it always is going to be. So you need to very much stay on top of it. Yeah.
Speaking of dynamic world, one of the questions I have too is with everything that's changing, how do you determine what to do next?
Yeah. For me, I'm more focused on looking for a company that is working on the kinds of problems that I'm excited to solve. And the more that I have delved deeper into this job search side, I think it's not so much visible in just the titles of jobs that are coming up or how the job descriptions are being laid out. Very often I'm seeing that once I'm speaking with people who are structuring and putting teams together, they might have a certain role in mind, but they're kind of also workshopping how their teams should eventually emerge as a functional group that tackles an overall problem. So I think that's very different from another world where you had a role come up with very, very specific things that was required and everybody knew exactly what that meant and, let's go. There's a lot more conversations that I think I'm having over longer periods of time with people to really understand what is the problem that the company is looking to solve with this role that they've put on their job board, and really getting close to what are the company level problems that it maps to and why the role has been structured this way. And I'm also seeing that the companies that are at least like look in the roles that I want to find, there's not necessarily a consistency in titling roles in a certain way or designing responsibilities in a cookie cutter way. So I would say the job market is nebulous, but it isn't dry. It's definitely a deeper look at where you want to work, what you want to work on, and how deeply you want to work on it. I'd say that for fellow job hunters, while it can be a tense period to look, there's still a lot of really rich problems that are requiring a high level of talent to be put in front of them, and to position a job search based on what problems are you interested to solve and what does that look like at a company.
And that's a great framework. What do the problems that you're looking both at the macro scale, what's the company solving? And then at the more internal micro scale, what problems am I solving at this company?
Yeah, I think to talk about some of the friction that you may encounter, I think there is, because it is a more employer-friendly market, there is a tendency for people who want to fill the jobs to be very, very specific about cookie cutter matching every single line to your resume to see whether you have them 100% or not. That kind of depends entirely on you and how closely you match it, and is that the strategy with
Mhm.
which you want to make inways. And I know people who've done that quite well. But there's also the other strategy where you solve from inside out to understand the problems that you want to get in front of, like you said, at a macro and a micro level.
And this is great because there's so many people right now I know who, they went through the layoffs, accepted a quick job, and now are on to their next thing, who have maybe stayed at the same company and are now saying, okay, it's been enough years. I want to look for my new thing, but how to do this? And especially as AI is changing and the landscape has been so dynamic, there's a lot of worry. Granted, the only constant we know is change.
Yeah.
So by staying, by remaining in place, you are selecting a factor. And you're saying, no, my choice is this. So it's just so many decisions people have to grapple with. And I like the framework you laid out for here are some of the considerations, not what is right or wrong, but just what are your own considerations.
Yeah, for sure. It's a complex process, and it is definitely very helpful to approach it with an idea of your wants, needs, your direction, your vision for yourself. And having that lens, I think, is really helpful to get yourself on the radar of the companies, the people who are matched to that vision. It's definitely helpful to have that clarity. I've got advice from many people that it is worth taking the time to find that clarity before you get hunting, so to speak, because that clarity will really help you orient yourself and organize how you go about the process.
So as we think through, I know there's a lot coming up, particularly this year, and we're just getting started. What are you looking forward to? What are like the trends? What do you want to see this year? Let's start at the macro environment, and then I'm curious for you personally.
Yeah, I mean, from a macro environment, I think the hesitation around what's AI? How is this going to affect us? Where is it going to show up? All of this, let's wait and see attitude. I'm really excited that in 2025, we are at a place where all of that is going to be shaken off or shrugged off. And in order to get jobs done, people are going to roll up their sleeves. Companies going to have to put pen to paper and really figure out, all right, we get how AI works at least some levels. And I think it's really exciting to see companies bringing more focus on how do they want to operationalize. I think also people at these companies are not looking deeply on a workflow level on how things are merged together, how things are flowing together. And I think there's going to be a lot of overhaul on tools, where before there were tools that were just a given as a part of the infrastructure, and more as AI becomes a part of operational reality, there's going to be a revisit of how do we structure the environment to leverage this. And that I think is a very exciting time. And that's something where people with experience on how to operationalize things in a prior world will have an advantage. I think, yeah, I'm excited about that. And I also think that SaaS mainly has been a model of subscription by license. And I think there's also a lot more interest in consumption models. It means that how deals are monetized, how subscriptions are monetized, are going to shift more towards consumption models versus license models. I think that's going to bring an interesting dynamic in how you structure your sales team, how you structure your revenue math. I feel like this is going to be a trend that continues in 2025 beyond the industries that saw movement in 2024.
Consumption versus subscription going on from the valuation of the company to how you structure it internally. So
Yeah.
that's a great point and something to look for.
Yeah, and I think the third part is we've seen in 2024 that AI is very commonly used for insights. And I think it's now going to be about actively guiding humans through the process, being seen as a companion tool in the process. And I think from that perspective, it's going to change how we determine human performance or human training. We're seeing a lot of changes in how enablement, for example, is being defined. And I think that trend will also continue. There's a heavy redefinition that's happening in these roles.
Rashmi, this has been super interesting. You've had such great insights from product-led growth and sales-led growth to how go-to-market motions have changed, how to think through what one should be looking for if they're trying to consider a move in their career, to a lot of what the future holds for AI and the overall software landscape.
Thanks, Janet. I mean, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, but this was especially fun because it's all things that I really love talking about. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And for everybody listening, this has been another episode of The Inside Scoop.